start off with a word from Rabbi Daniel from Kollel. He was a gewaltiger Balmusa, Bamat Rabbi Israel Salanta, and his Shuasm was of such a high standard that when I think back, I think to myself, I can't understand how it can be demanded from human beings the midas and the anhogas that he used to demand from his talmidim. I'm torn between two emotions. This Wednesday, the talk from Kriyas Yamsuf, and the Chazal tell us that on Wednesday morning, as the Mitzim were drowning in the sea, the Malachim wanted to say Shira. And the Rebishter stopped it. Babusta Pisgon, Maisi Yodai Tovim Bayam, V'atem Shira. So Daniel, the Balmusa, the Balmidas asked a simple question. If Moshe Rabbeinu knew what was happening in heaven, if he saw or knew that the Eibishter was going to stop the Malachim from saying Shira, why did he, as Yosef Moshe Bnei Yisrael, why did he start the Shira? Ma'aseh Yodai Tovim Bayom. If there is such a midah that Ma'aseh Yodai Tovim Bayom stops Malachim from saying Shira, then why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu use that same midah and stop, not say as Yosef Moshe? I'm saying it b'kitzur, that he said there is a difference between a malach and a mensch. A malach, when he's sent on a message to do something, his whole being is absorbed in that mitzvah, that tzivur that is given to him. He can only feel one emotion. A man, a human being, is in that madrega higher than a malach. A man can have, a human being can have mixed emotions. You can laugh on the outside and cry on the inside. You can be with simcha and cry at the same time. That's the idea of ein malach echad oise stay shlichis. A malach can't do to say shlichis, because if he does one, he's entirely absorbed in that arbet, and that's it. Malachim, because you could only feel one thing, only Gulas Yisrael, and not Ma'aseh Yodai Tovim Bayam, they are not allowed to say Shira. A man, a human being, can say Shira and feel the simcha, and yet at the same time have also the same emotion of Ma'aseh Yodai Tovim Bayam. He can have a paradoxical feeling within him. I'm saying this is an introduction because I myself am torn between two emotions. Rav David Shleimer asked me to come and speak about the Kollel Yisrael that I met. It's impossible to properly evaluate a Kollel Yisrael, whether B'Torah or Ba'avoid or in Musa or in Midas. You have to be a little bit of a Kollel yourself to be able to appreciate, to understand, to evaluate. I'm not saying this because of false anibis. I haven't got the koyach to be mitired as it should be, justifiably, the greatness of the people that I had the privilege of knowing in my lifetime. Rosh Yeshivas, Rabbonim. Yet on the other hand, I think to myself, I look around, some of you, Baruch Hashem, they say about the Ropshitzer. The Ropshitzer was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. He had 3 sons. And when he was about to leave Al Modain, he called his sons over, 2 sons of his. The older son wasn't there. And he said to them, you should respect your older brother. Not only because you're mechuyev b'din haTorah, es l'rabbis, but because he was 3 years old when the Baal Shem Tov was installed. That means he lived for 3 years in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, and for that itself, he's worthy to be respected. I look around, as some of you, Baruch Hashem, had the privilege of seeing some Rosh Yeshivas Gdolei Yisrael. I refer particularly to Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. We saw the peoples of Amish Rosh Yeshiva, our brother Yisrael. And you have something to tell your children. But what about the generations that come after us? Our children and our grandchildren. We never saw these type of people. We have no asaga with how Kollel Beth Yisrael is, whether it's in Torah or Midas or Musa or whatever it is. And therefore I think that if there is somebody still left on the Kadu Ha'aretz that met them, spoke with them, heard of them, and is able to pass it on, he has a solemn duty to do so, to pass on at least some of the impressions that he had, not doing justice to the figure that he's painting, but at least have some idea. Rav Sorotsky used to say, to Bad Lenin Akrovach Harum, Ever Ve'amarto, Lahazir G'dolim Anaktani. He used to say, Lahazir G'dolim Anaktanim, Lahazir is a Losh Zoyha, to shine. It's a mitzvah, Lahazir, to make shine, the G'dolim Anaktani, to explain to the Ktani, the Großkeit von G'dolim. And when I speak of them, it is not only that I'm imparting a little bit of information to other people, but es macht mir wichtig im Herzen. I myself get a little bit of Zehirus and Zayah in me. And that is why I condescended to come. I don't say that this should be done everywhere, but it was a minhag in Telzer that the mashgiach used to come every few months into your room where you were stanzia, and used to tell you to open up your case, your chemadan, and see if your shirts were folded up with up to side, if your singlet was clean. And he used to say, if you have no seder in your room, you have no seder in your lerman. You have to be a masuder in everything. And I remember distinctly once, I once came to yeshiva. I must have eaten eggs that morning, and must have been on my tie, a piece, the yellow of the egg must have gone. So he sent me home. He sent me home to change my tie. Er hat gesagt, die ganze Welt hat wissen, ihr geht herein in der Früh. Even when talking, as you see, the Chalamoid, and I don't write, but when writing, the first one, a shtickle seder. There has to be a mesuder on the things that I tell you. So therefore, I'm starting off right from the beginning. First of all, I introduce myself. I was born in Russia. My father, Zechayim Livracha, was a Talmud of the Temchechimi yeshiva, the Rashab, in Lubavitch. I don't remember very much about my father. He was nostalgic when I was before Bar Mitzvah. I once went from Telzer to Otwotsk to visit the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rayatz. The four of us went together to visit him. I was 18 at the time. I remember I met the Rebbe, and he asked us each one what our name was. I was the youngest of the Chapuras. I said, my name is Gutnick. Gutnick. Your father's name was so-and-so and so-and-so? Yeah. So he took his finger and pointed at me. He says, do you know that your father at 18 was a Boki in Shas and Poskin? Who holds to? That who holds to has been haunting me for the rest of my life. So as a young man, he was a maskir, the secretary of the Rebbe the Rashab. But it was after the Russian Revolution, and apparently he couldn't. I didn't know the story, but my son Yosef got the letters from Ger. At the beginning they wanted money from him for it, but then they gave it to him as a matana. The correspondence that went between Yerushalayim, Rav Dushinsky, and my father in Moscow. And eventually Rav Dushinsky brought him out to Eretz Yisrael, where he became a maskir of the Beis Din in Yerushalayim, and we lived most of the time in Hebron. My father, Chaim Gutnick, used to be during the weekdays in Yerushalayim or Tel Aviv, and on the weekends he used to come home in Hebron. Then the Rebbe, the previous Rayatz Rebbe, sent him to become the Chabad Rav in London. My mother did not want to go, and she said to him that he should go first to see what's doing to prepare the ground. The Eibishter stood the whole punkt that weekend, when there was the Hebron of Pogrom, we were that Shabbos in Tel Aviv. Anes from Hashemayim. And after the pogrom, my mother decided also to go to London. And we joined him in England. At that time in England, what I remember, I don't know as a little boy, but all I remember was there was a yeshiva Chaim there with Rabbi Chaim the Rosh Yeshiva, and at the beginning my father would not let me go to school, and it was compulsory to learn English and mathematics. So I used to have 2 hours a day. An English teacher used to come and teach me, and Kollel Beth taught us both together, Yotzegewen, the schooling, and the rest of the time we had Melamdim. As I said, my father was nostalgic when I was very young, before my bar mitzvah. So my mother couldn't afford anymore to have a teacher and so on and so forth. So she did a shtickle trick. She made me 2 years older than what I really am. It was compulsory to go till the age of 14 to school. So we gemacht in 2 years, so that when I was 12 years of age, I stopped going to school and I started going to yeshiva Chaim under Rabbi Chaim. Those who know of Rabbi know that he was a Balmusa, also a Talmud from Telzer originally. When I'm Magid from Kellam, and then eventually went over to Kfar Chassidim. At that time also there was Dayan Abramsky, was Dayan, and he became very friendly with the family. I don't know exactly how the Shtalshulas Hadvorim, but apparently Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Bloch, Telzer, and Rabbi Mordechai Katz, were coming back from South Africa. They had gone there to raise money for the yeshiva, and they were coming back to Lithuania, and on the way they went through London. So Dan Abramsky talked my mother into the fact, you have a son that is a Baal Kishron, it's a pity to waste him. The Rosh Yeshivas are going to arrive here in London, utilize the opportunity and send him to Telzer. No, my mother would not send me to a yeshiva, a Mestagdish yeshiva, without asking the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So she sent a table to the Lubavitcher Rebbe Notvotsk, and the answer was printed. He answered that as Telzer yeshiva is a yeshiva where they learn Musa, Kemena in Tzufah. You can go there. The end was we left Chol HaMoed Pesach, we left London and we went our way to Telzer. We went by train. I was a young boy, only 15 years of age at the time. And there were Yellow Soldat and the Nazis were on the train, and I was having the talks to them and telling them off. And I remember the Telzer over there said, of mir Rabbeinu Shalom Hashem Absoyim Hashem. Anyway, we came to a place called Kleiper, the Memo, which Hitler Machshamoy took over. We arrived there Erev Shvi Shel Pesach. If we were to take the train to continue on, we would have arrived on Yom Tov. So instead of that, they took a taxi. A taxi cost a lot of money. And the Rosh Yeshivas I saw, they were very upset. Because they went out to collect money, and they'd have to spend a fortune on a taxi to get back in time. So on the way, they were so upset. Sagte Rav, lass mich reden ein bisschen lernen, Telzer Rav. Was du gelernt, deines Mann? Sag ich, was sagt die Gitten? Der Punkt hat der Rebbe geholfen. He picked on such a sugi, where I knew a Rambam mit der Ravachlekes Arayve, mit der Stikuteira, and then das. So that when I arrived in Telzer, I got the name Danilo. A falscher Namen, that I come with Chacham from London arrived, a young boy from London arrived. I remember we landed outside the city area, and we walked all the way. We walked all the way out. What shall I tell you about Yeshiva Telzer? If ever there is a place that you can go called Gan Eden on this earth, that was the place. A small city. I remember some American came one day and he built 6 toilets with chains, which didn't exist. They lasted 4 or 5 days and smashed to pieces with nothing left. A city that didn't even have proper sewerage. But the whole town lived on the yeshiva. Everything was centered around the yeshiva. Of course, during the 5 years that I was there, there were many Goli Rosh Yeshivas that came and everything like that. But from what I remember, we never took much notice of them. There was a hasoga of what is called Bittul Torah in Bittul Zman, not to waste 5 minutes. And even if to hear a drosha from someone, or to hear a pilpul, not in the suki of the Gemara that we learned, was regarded by us as Bittul Torah. If it was on the Masechta we learned, okay, but outside of that, it's Bittul Zman and Bittul Torah. Everything was learning and learning and learning and learning. We learned a Masechta, what yeshiva used to say, Shiurim. We learned one Masechta, the Girsa. To this day, I don't know if everyone used the Mishnah Berurah, but we used to learn Shulchan Aruch in the morning. Some people learned Chaya Adam, and before Mincha or before Ma'ariv, we used to learn either Mesulah Shishon or Chevis Algovas, Shara Tshuva Rabbeinu Yonah, in Yonah and Musa. There was nothing that occupied our minds excepting Limud HaTorah. Even though our Rosh Yeshivas were involved in Aguda politics and encouraged the Bochim to belong to Tziyah Agudas Yisrael, but it was a sideline. Our Ikar was learning. And this is how it went on all through my lifetime. It was only in 1939, when the Russians came in and divided up Eastern Europe between themselves and the Germans. And they occupied Lithuania. It was only then that I started realizing as a young man what a Rosh Yeshiva was and what a Rav was. Because from Poland, from Angelofen, all the Rosh Yeshivas, and everyone was trying to escape from the Nazis, and they all came to Vilna, all came to Kovna, all came to Lithuania. And of all the personalities that I met and knew and heard of, I'm not talking about, of course, the Rosh Yeshivas in Telzer itself, Rabbi Chaim Gutnick, Rav, Supreme Rav was the Rav. Rabbi Meir was a Rosh Yeshiva, Ahmad Shir, his brother, another brother, Rabbi Zalman Rav, Yochanan Rav was a Manai Ruchni, and then we had Rabbi Chaim Telzer, a son of Azriel. I didn't catch Rabbi Chaim, but his son Rabbi Azriel, who was also a Rosh Yeshiva. This Rabbi Azriel was, I've never seen a Gemara in his hand. All he learned was Shitta B'Kubes. Never seen anything like it. Never saw a bubble in his hand, only Shitta B'Kubes. But his shurim were absolutely unbelievable. And I wrote them down, I've got them. It tells the yeshiva asked them for me, but I wouldn't give it to them. It's precious. I remember once, when I was there, Arangaton and Lerner, this Rabbi Azriel, Rabbi Chaim's son, that he used to take a walk every day. And one day, I saw it with my own eyes. It's not just a story. Because three Bochim we used to walk behind to see, to accompany him. Goy, Scotland, fall on him. And one day there's a ozera called a lake. And he went for a walk. And he walked into the lake. He walked into the lake. That's how he was. I'm not talking about those influenced our lives unbelievably. I just want to tell you one episode that tells of Derech. You will notice and I don't wear my tzitzis out. It's not because ich halt mit das Farbe. Father Shara Rosh, he's got them that. What happened was, I came from London. And I used to comb my hair. If I had a haircut, I had a normal haircut. And in London, I never walked around with the tzitzis outside in those days. We didn't. Anyway, after about 2 months in the yeshiva, I went to a barber, and I had this Augeschoren ganze Kopf with the payas. The tzitzis arois. After a couple of days walking around like that, hat mir der Rabbi angerufen und sich in Office. Was ist das? So, ich schale mich zitze. Schub. Sagt, das was bis jetzt, you haven't been kind in Mitzvah von Führung. Was ist das mit den Zitzes? So, steht sich ein Risse, Mäuse. Sagt, das sei nicht genau Moritz. Du so gleich, was ein wachsender Haar, und reinstecken die Zitzes auf zu reden. So, ich habe nicht gehabt, die Chutzpe zu sagen, aber ich wusste alle anderen Wochen, mit denen sie auch getan. Hat gesagt, ich gebe zu verstehen, gesagt, dass dann Tate für gesagt, Jesus bleibt sich in der Brauch. Ich sage, als dort 2 Mamore Chazal. In ein Chazal steht als Titztach Harbe. Ein anderer Ort wird geprägt, das haben Pasken des Lahaloche. And the will Chubaton, that we gain to the one extreme, they know themselves to regain in it. The Chasastira, the name that steht auf Titztach Harbe, and those of the Rambam that gave the other extreme. Der Terra Doktor, es wenn sich wer du bist. Eben du bist, Herr Bocher, was du kämlich gehit in Terra Mitzvahs, sagt mit dir, go to the other extreme, was kommen zurück. Aber eben du bist, Herr Bocher, was du gehit in Terra Mitzvahs, sagt dir, es gesungen worden, auf Titztach Harbe. Und sind Demonstranten, aber ich nicht, sein Zivui, punished as a chup. I lost my hair because of old age, but I don't wear my tzitzis out because of that. Das gewinnt der in Telzer, was man nicht gelost, als ich komme nach Bocher, als ich gelost wachsen nach Bord, hat man nicht gelost. If you came with a beard, hast du gemerkt, nach Bord. In Telzer gewinnt 29 chassidische Wochen, Lubavitche Wochen. Allem getrogen werden. But all the others didn't wear beards. Das gewinnt der. Also bis gekommen als du gekannt gehen weiter. If you didn't come, is al Titztach Harbe. Don't go to extremes. But as I said, that was the yeshiva. I think the 2 people that had the biggest influence on me, on my lifestyle, at that particular time, were 2 people. Rabbi Chaim Gutnick and Rabbi Mitzvah Kovnerot. With Rabbi Chaim, you didn't have to be a big maven to see that this was a Ida Kodesh. You just had to have a little conversation with him, and you saw power and Kedusha on it. In Bar Avrom, the Kovnerot, Avrom Shapiro, if you ever wanted to see the type of Arov, Starkheit, and Goyness, and everything, you saw it on that man. To tell you about them would to take days and weeks, just a few nikudas. In Telzer there was a mishpacha, a Babashim mishpacha called Birki. I used to eat Shabbos there, therefore I was friendly with the family. He had a daughter, was a Meshadra given, with Rabbi Chaim Basselman's son. They made the chassan and they made in Telzer. You can imagine Rabbi Chaim Gutnick's son getting married. You come into the Kovner of all the Rosh yeshivas that were there in Golos at that particular time all came to the wedding. It was one of them. I've never seen it in my life again. The chuppah was supposed to be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the Russians in Machshimon wouldn't allow the chuppah to take place. They wouldn't allow a gathering of Jews to gather together. So the chuppah didn't go on till 8 o'clock at night, till they found some little street there where the police allowed them to make the chuppah. The Vadas Arosa Klang, everybody was anxious to hear. Was the Gdoli Yisrael and Reden of the Chassan. A rumor arose that Rabbi Chaim said that no droshes for the Chassan. Only the father of the Kala is to say a few words, and he will say a few words, and that's all. No. So there was intervention. No. What was the reason? The reason was he didn't want any shvachim. He knew that if there would be shvachim, he didn't want any shvachim. I was at the wedding. So first of all, the father of the Kala got up, Mirkin got up, and he said, now I understand what was mezingt. It should have been written, was up zu Chutzes Yerushalayim. Aber der sagt, dass kommen eine Zeit, wenn mit Losen in the Gassen machen a Chuppah, even though here in the Chutzes von Telzer hat man nicht gelost, aber Chutzes Yerushalayim von Losen. He stopped speaking. We were waiting for Rabbi Chaim to get up to speak. Before he got up to speak, Kovner gets up by himself, the Dvar the gate ready. He's going to speak. And he starts off by Bekitzer. I mean, he spoke for 20 minutes. I was saying it Bekitzer. He started off by saying, am geht mishaber sein. Steht in Chazal, as mishaber de Kala kedei lachar vo al bailo. Auf ein Chossen sagt, und ich doch kein Mitzvah, aber das mishaber sein. Und von deswegen sagt wird man sich anders. Everybody gets up, a Chassan is, and mishaber, the Chossen sagt, the Kala sagt, why is that, sagt Weil as a father Pnoim, versteht und darf mishaber sein, gedei soll der Achshida. But the Chassan, it's all too late already. So what's the shiva? Oder gesagt der ganzen Indien, wegen dem Indien, man wünscht sich Mazel Tov. When you give brochas one to another, fragen wir mal, was kommt es jetzt? So you've got to create an atmosphere of merit, of schus, in order that the Mazel Tovs and the brochas that are extended should be chal. Chilas Kveiterose von Baranovitscher Rosh Yeshiva. Wir verstehen ganz gut, als Wunsch gesprochen. Aber das ist doch nicht eine von Shvachim. You said, I say it in English, it's not eine von Shvachim in order to praise him up because of the Shidduch or anything like that. It's in order that his son should have the brachas and that he should have the nachas and so on and so forth. Then made it some mitzvah gdola, the Shabeach, and zu sagen what, and he started in Shabeach sein. Rabbi Chaim got up, and he didn't answer him at all, didn't say a word, but he said a ganzen Indien, the Bichas Chasanim. The Bichas Chasanim is Bichas HaMitzvahs, the Bichas Chasanim is a Bichas Eidor B'Shvach. The difference is, if it's Bichas Chasanim is a mitzvah, then it has to be over Lasi Yoson. If it's Bichas Eidor and Shvach, you can say it any time. Der gefragt der Kasche, ja, sie können sagen, Sheva Brachas, die Chassanim, ist doch schon unter der Gruppe, doch nicht über das Yosan. So ich wollte, was der Ramor sagt, dass die Ike Kinyen ist der Yichud, nicht die Gruppe, und Meile ist über das Yosan. Then at the Mondim Rogachover, you must realize nowadays, the Mondim Rogachover, it's nicht in Dover Chodos, but Baruch Hashem, so those are the story, and all in yeshivas kennen them. In jener Zeit ist in Rogachover's Teure nicht gewinn sehr bewusst. And he mentioned it. Hat ganz Linie wegen Grüß Miller, wegen einer Linie von Fuhren im Sheches, einer Mitzvah im Sheches, and he did a chidush, and he said that just the same as there is a mitzvah to get married, so there is a mitzvah to stay married. The mitzvah to get married is a one-time affair. And the made it to say, to stay married, das ist a mitzvah von einem Nimshechet für ein ganzes Leben. Der Pfarrer sagt, Meshevach 7 Mal, every day is for 10 years, a ganze Leid. Na seht ungerät die ganzen Linie. That wedding, as I said, the Ponevezherov was there. I'm mentioning the Ponevezherov, where are they going to marry? The Ponevezherov, I'll tell you a story about Ponevezherov. In Telzer, we had a chabura of 10 or 15 bochim, and each chabura had an elder bocher from Pirt Mashiach that used to be a madrich. We used to ask him shilas and learn, and they used to give advice and so on and so forth. My madrich, elder younger man, got married. Tarov in Kupishke Rov's tochter. He was a peculiar Rov. You know, he didn't say Tilim. He used to go in the street and Chazar Yodeh. He used to say Yodeh. Instead of Tilim, he used to say Yodeh. That was his style. Anyway, I went to the Chasana, and I must have got sick or something. And they took me the next morning, they took me to Ponevezh, which is the closest big city next to it. The Ponevezh Rav heard that a Talmud, a yeshiva Talmud, you can't imagine the love that the Rosh Yeshivas and the Rabbonim had for Rabban Torah. He had a yeshiva Bach was krank, so the Rebbetzin came and brought food, and the Rosh Yeshiva came to see me. Anyway, it's been a ganze Machlokas to listen to the Torah. And the doctor said that I've got appendicitis and I should be operated on. Kupishke Rov was a Lubavitcher Rov, so he wouldn't make an operation unless he asked the Rebbe. They sent a telegram to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Northwest, and the answer came to get another opinion. Ponevezher Rov hat gekocht, das ist nicht in Perlach. Doktoren sagen mir, ich mache eine Operation, das ist in Northwest. The end was, they asked a second opinion. 3 days went past, Baruch Hashem, I got better, because I'm still übergegessen, it was to give in and finished. And I went back to yeshiva. 20 years later, I went to Eretz Yisrael, and there was a young man with the name of Rav Silver, Chaim Ber Silver. He was here in Melbourne. He was from Kelmer Yeshiva. And he was the secretary of Rabbi Yeshivas in Yerushalayim. And I said I want to go and visit Ponevezher Rov. In my days in the yeshiva, they used to call him Rabbi Yoshe Kula. Anyway, he took me and we went to visit Ponevezher Rov. Ponevezher Rov asked me my name, and then, Gutnick? Oh, he said, I remember you, Zakta. But ich schon herausgenommen mit der blinde Kischke. Sag ich, ja, 3 Jahre zurück. Sagt er, seid ihr Regierung gerecht? I go in, he remembered a Talmud that saw him a few days. I remember the last night, we left on Shabbos for Lamoyed Sukkos. Shabbos morning for Lamoyed Sukkos. We left from there. We had big shilas about Shabbos. I remember we went to the Kollel said, "I get bezos of uns." Then she asked me Shabbos in a time of Shakonos Naposhos. Anyway, we spent the night with Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. I remember he cried a lot. Everybody knew the States, what it was like and everything. But you know what he cried about? War was on. They knew what was going to happen. What bothered him more than anything was that he was not Meshamesh of Chaim Brisker. This is how God in his soul. Early Shalish, cried a bit at his early Shalish and Mastis of Chaim. I remember he told me one thing at that night when we were there. I've heard the story before, you may have heard it before too, I heard it with Pete Kotcher. Der gesagt und erzählt, is that junge Leute Bochim going out into the world. I want you to know, he says, when I was your age, I thought I would turn the world upside down. Ich never came the world. And I worked for 10 years on it, he said. And I came to the conclusion, the world cannot nicht überkehren. But, ich bin ein Rav, in der Stadt, Baranovich. Ich kann überkehren Baranovich. I worked that for another 10 years and I saw that I couldn't succeed there either. Aber ich lehrt, nicht Baranovich, was mein Kehille, mein eigene Kehille in der Schule, wir da, und meine Barabati, ich kann sie machen, überkehren. And I worked for 10 years on them, didn't succeed. So I said to myself, nicht die Welt, nicht die Stadt, nicht die Kehille, my family. Change there. 10 years I've been working on it, he says, I can't succeed. And I started asking myself, why not? He said, you know why? Because I started the wrong way. I started with Kerem Ibn Abel. I should have started with myself. Das sicher bekehren. Nor dem die Familie, nor dem die Barabatim, nor dem die Stadt, nor dem die Welt. If you start with the world and want to finish up with yourself, he says it comes to nothing. Better, sagt so die schweren Kirabonim. Ich weiß, was Amerika ist. At that time we weren't sure even where we were going. Ich weiß, was Amerika ist. Werd nicht Kirabonim. Werd melamne Davike. Lernt mit jüdische Kinder alle Weis. Lernt mit jüdische Kinder, so klar Gott auf der Welt. Lernt mit jüdische Kinder ein bisschen Jüdischkeit. And at the beginning, when we came here, we thought to ourselves, we'll bring out the yeshiva from Shanghai, the Mirror Yeshiva, and we'll start the yeshiva here. When we came here, they didn't want to see it. Australian Jewish community came to us and said, we give you money, get out of this country, you are causing anti-Semitism. We didn't have an idea of what to say. 3 of the shluchim went here, came to Melbourne, and made a reception and a dinner for them here. And the late Rabbi Dangler was presiding. In the life, when you get to the place, where got us in the place, we had Shabbos about Shabbos when we arrived. We didn't know when to keep Shabbos. We didn't eat any meat. So Rabbi Dangler said, we've got to get rid of these people. They're going to cause us trouble. After they returned back to Sydney, they came to us, a delegation of rabbis and balabatim, and gave us each money that we should leave this country and go to America. I think Rabbi was already in America then. I think the Bochum wrote we needed a permit, a visa to get there. They wrote and they were given visas. I fortunately or otherwise, I wrote to the Rabbi Chaim to send me a letter stating that I would go to the yeshiva in New York. And when the telegram arrived, the Telzer Hashgacha sent you to Australia, assuming that is your place. You've got to stay there. The war will finish one day. There will be refugees coming, Jews here. Eden was kommen aher, so gefunden dem Rebbeinu Shalom, that they thought had deserted them. So I stayed, Rebbe Sindestra and her daughter stayed, Rav Silva and his family stayed, Nachan German Pinchas Berliner stayed, all the rest left. Amongst them was Rav Nosson Henneborg. He was the only one that succeeded in his career. All the others when I met in future years, told me the reason they think they didn't succeed was because they deserted Australia and left Australia. But look what has happened. I came here, I couldn't find a Rambam. They wanted to make me a chaplain. I thought the rabbi was going to examine me and learn me. And I couldn't find a Rambam until I found a Rabbi Folk in Sydney. He had a library. So I went to his house. It's only for show, not for to look in. Can't look in. In Sydney, when I arrived, there were only 2 Eden Shomer Shabbos. How did I know there were Shomer Shabbos? Because they used to print in the telephone book. Don't bring on Saturday. It used to be printed in the telephone book. Melbourne is even a shtickle Yiddische Stadt, but most of the Rumi Eden were in Shepparton. A few here. What has happened? Baruch Hashem. I was once sitting in a television station. It was Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron. Next to me was sitting a Buddhist. So he asked him, he said, why did you here? And if I told you at the beginning that I have mixed emotions, I want to tell you that I have mixed emotions. On the one hand, I dance with joy that I was privileged to learn in a yeshiva. I was privileged to meet Kollel Yisrael. And on the other hand, I live now in a time when Kollel Torah is at the bottom rung. We've got so few people to whom you can look up to. And we are now the Kollel Yisrael. On us depends the Osint. I remember I said it once here to Smicha Kollel. The last 9 months that I was in Lithuania, we learned Yeridea. They would have never given us Smicha. But because we were going to go out into the world, and who knows what was going to happen, Governor Rov advised us to learn Yeridea and he gave us Smicha. When he gave us, after 9 months, when he gave us Smicha, he said, "Mir gib ma chida dem Osset für den jüdischen Volk in euer Kind." Der Osset für den jüdischen Volk liegt in unserer Hand. We must miss the opportunity to lift up the covered Torah, covered from Talmidei Chachamim, the Hasir Gdolim al Aktanim, to make the Gdolim shine on us Ktanim, and those that are below us, to make us shine upon them, so that there will come a day, that if Mashiach comes, there will be some people who will recognize him and want him. Maybe this place here, the Zikaron, the Kollel Yisrael, that we have the privilege of knowing and living with him, the Schusel and Beistein, kommen die Gule Schleimer, benissen Asid in Igoel, und der Eberste Rachmanus hat nachkommen, zu den Schicken, Mashiach zu kennen, in dem Friede schließen.
Right. Sorry, everyone. I don't know if you remember. I see the girl was so many